Who wants to take the laboring oar on this?
Good morning, Danielle Rodriguez, DPW Director of Operations. I do have a guest. I'll allow her to introduce herself.
Are you selling those shirts, or what's the deal with
Not
this?
yet.
I didn't recognize you.
Not yet.
You gotta earn 'em.
We will be soon, hopefully.
I can't see what it's
City.
This is going to be the plow truck we're putting you on.
with is a monster. Is that a monster truck?
Yeah,
Yeah, it does look
Okay, man.
it is. It is. So
Okay.
Don't forget he has a CDL.
I remembered
right.
that. That's why I said this is going to be his truck. Absolutely. So I do have a guest with me. I'll allow her to introduce herself. She has a very short presentation, and then I'm going to give you our snow and ice overview that also correlates with her presentation.
Okay, please.
All right, thank you all so much for your time today. So my name is Allison Madison, and Kaylin's gonna advance my slides here and show
Madison
you.
from Madison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sure you've heard that before, but that's,
100 times.
right.
So I work at Wisconsin Saltwise, which is a coalition of organizations across the state, municipalities, stormwater partnerships, all working to reduce the amount of salt going into our fresh water. And the Fund for Lake Michigan is our primary funder of this work. So next slide here will show you a little bit of the data of what we're seeing, but I want to really acknowledge that it's not just the concerns of salt going into our water. We also see, sometimes people don't see, but put off, looking at all the damage that salt does. So it corrodes metal, damages concrete, right? So if you look at all the damage that salt does to our vegetation, infrastructure, repairing roads and bridges more frequently, for every dollar we spend on salt, you guys are spending $10 to repair the damage that salt does. So it really looks less cheap if we look big picture.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Alderman.
how long before the $10 damage is recognized? So you're saying once it's time to repair
Yeah,
it?
so when we put that salt down, we're doing that much damage. It's just because it accelerates it prematurely ages your bridges and your roads and vehicles, right?
Yeah, there's no question about
Sidewalks
that.
too?
Sidewalks too. Yep, you can see the concrete kind of spalding there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
A
it's
little history. When did salt first get used for
in
snow and ice control?
Wisconsin about like the 1950s, 1960s.
So that late?
Yep.
So what did they do
So-
in 1820?
Right.
So before that, it was a lot of mechanical removal. I mean, cars, people actually had snow rollers. They just packed the snow down, and you take your, horse and sleighs, like across things.
Well,
I mean,
they
there were
had
like
cars
street
and they
cars.
had the cars existed.
But there was clearing, a lot of mechanical removal, and then some abrasives were used too. But it's just, so it's really pretty recently we've started to use salt, and like just the amount of it has skyrocketed, and we've thought it just disappears, right? It does its job, it goes away, but it doesn't. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Go ahead.
So as we can see here, since we started using salt, like I said, about the 1960s, the amount of salt showing up in our water, and salt is sodium chloride. So once it dissolves, that's what does the melting. We can look at those two pieces individually. So the chloride concentrations in Wisconsin are naturally between 0 and 10. Because we have really fresh water, right? But what we see is every year as we add more and more salt, those chloride and sodium concentrations are just going up and up and up. And from the map here, you can see that we definitely have the highest concentrations, unsurprisingly, in the Milwaukee area because we have the most pavement, right? The most salt going down. And so those salt levels are building up in the water here. This is showing us chloride concentrations in lakes and rivers. And in the Milwaukee area, we have some that have gone from, like I said, 0 to 10 up into the thousands of milligrams per liter. So my next slide here will show you some of the,
Sure.
Go ahead, Alderman Sanford.
Yeah, can you go back? So what are you actually saying?
Salt's bad for the environment.
So we're saying salt is bad for the water, for the things that live in there. It reduces rates of growth, as you see in the next slide, reduces rates of reproduction, increases organism susceptibility to parasites. It makes our water more green and murky because it first kills off the zooplankton, and that's what eats algae. So it's like this whole ecosystem of effects. I only have a few minutes, so I wanted to show something that I think is just really eye-catching. Here, showing you reduced rates of growth. And this is little fingerling trout, and this is research coming out of the University of Toledo. Bill Hintz is one of the leading researchers looking at this. So And these are concentrations. He had these fish in the high road salt was 1,000 milligrams per liter. And like I said, we've sometimes seen in the Milwaukee area levels getting up 10 times above that. So I did want to mention that this article was just published in the Washington Post last week. So if you want to get some more, a little more background into the science of this, this was a really well-written article, and it profiles the work of Sujay Kaushal. So he's a researcher out of the University of Maryland who's studying this. And if you go to the next slide, Kaylin. So Sujay's work is saying this isn't just a problem of salt. He's calling it actually freshwater salinization syndrome, because what happens is as our salt levels go up, the sodium and the chloride concentrations, we actually have ion exchange happening in soils, bedrock, and in our drinking water in pipes. So the lead crisis in Flint was exacerbated by the fact that they were drawing salted water from the Flint River. It caused more lead to come out of pipes. So definitely in the Milwaukee area, we guys have lead pipes. As your water, drinking water is getting saltier, thankfully it's Lake Michigan, which is huge, right? So it has a lot of ability to dilute the salt that's coming in, but still Lake Michigan receives over 1 million tons of salt a year, not just from Milwaukee, but Chicago, all the cities. So as that water is getting saltier, it means more lead is going to come out of pipes. And so Sujay's team calls that this formation of novel chemical cocktails. The lead, as the next slide will show you, the manganese is coming out of the water. So this is a photo taken.
Most of our runoff enters either the storm
drains. Yep.
Does the storm sewer system or the combined sewer system? So our treatment plants have
cannot
the ability
remove
to
it.
extract
Yes.
salt.
Yep. So the wastewater treatment plants are not designed to remove sodium and chloride. It's too tiny. So the Madison wastewater treatment plant ran the numbers, because they actually receive salt year-round from water softeners in addition to winter road salt. So they are really dumping, I should say dumping, they discharge, right, a lot of water that's untreated for salt every day of the year. So they're like, can we pull this out?
Right.
Technically, yes, right? Technically you can pull salt out. It's the desalination process. But the cost of that would have increased sewage rates by 500%. And it's all greenhouse gases, because it's just so energetically expensive to pull salt out of water. It's like running reverse osmosis. And especially in Milwaukee, because you guys have a combined sewer system, I mean, that would be even more expensive because there's so much volume of water coming through your system. So it's it's technically possible, but it's not feasible. So the work here is all on how do we reduce the amount of salt coming in. So the next slide here will show you that there are a variety of things to look at in terms of winter maintenance. Now, I mentioned in Madison area, other areas, we do see salts from water softeners. Thankfully, people on Lake Michigan water, it's naturally pretty soft, so you don't have that. But the focus here then needs to be on road salt and how we work to really use salt as efficiently as possible. And there's a whole wheel of best practices, and Danielle is going to share how the city has been working to adopt and use, fine-tune all of these. But what I really want to point out here is this: expectations for level of service. I'm talking to you right now. I'm going to be talking to operators later today. But you guys have the platforms to speak more to the general public, but speak to your residents in your districts so that people understand that salt doesn't just disappear, right? It has real impacts, and those are impacts on our drinking water, on these natural resources, right, on our infrastructure. And so if we have the expectation that salt should be used, some is good, that's true, right? But more isn't always better. And we need people to understand and do some basic things like parking on the right side of the street so we can get better mechanical removal. Try to leave early, leave space, stay home if you don't have to go out during the storm. So some of those things that can help support the Department of Public Works. And I think also really celebrate the work that they're doing. So the PSAs we have here that we're going to be showing this fall and winter, I guess winter at this point, are working set out to do that. But we have some templates for your e-newsletters, if you guys, or if you have a paper newsletter that you send out to residents to kind of help promote that message. What should these expectations be? It's not bare pavement, right? It's safe and reasonable driving
You
conditions.
realize our ordinances specifically require homeowners to essentially salt sidewalks?
Yeah, and in the city of
Literally
Madison,
requires it?
they actually changed their ordinance last winter, and they said now they've kind of gone the opposite direction. If you have extra salt left over on your sidewalk more than 24 hours after, you have to sweep that up because they're seeing all this salt going into their lakes.
Can we change that ordinance? I mean, I've often wondered about that. I mean, I've read that clearing ordinance that you must shovel and salt. the
Use
bare
a
pavement.
de-icer.
I mean, we certainly would need a sponsor. Right?
Well, I think homeowners would be fine with that. I mean, because
An extra expense.
No, because they got to do the extra work and go out and clean it up. Make sure it's not.
they just won't.
Yeah, and so, I don't know that, I'm not necessarily promoting that, because I feel like if it's like, do we need another thing on people, an extra salt? If you sweep it up and you throw it in the landfill, you throw it in the trash, guess what? That landfill leachate all goes through,
Right.
wastewater treatment plants can't remove it, it still goes downstream,
That's
right?
true.
So it's
Yeah,
just
all
getting
of
people
that.
to only use kind of what's needed, which is what, I don't know, at one point we'll show the PSAs, but if there are any other questions, but I'll let
Yeah,
Kaylin
so
take
this is
over.
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't see an alternative to salt based on your message. You're saying just reduce it.
Yeah,
That's the only
I
thing.
mean,
So that's the only thing we can do?
so right now, it's really maximizing mechanical removal, which we've seen in the industry. People have gone from, and Danielle can speak more to this, rates around, 800 pounds a lane mile, down to 300 pounds a lane mile, down to, I know some municipalities now, they're using 100 pounds a lane mile. So, I mean, that's like almost like a tenfold kind of like decrease, right? So really dialing it in with mechanical removal and the use of different products. There is research looking at some other alternatives. There are some non-chlorides, but right now they're very expensive. So I know Minnesota DOT is using potassium acetate along Lake Superior because they're seeing algal blooms in there in a lake that has never had it before, right? So they're willing to pay a lot more for that. And again, it won't do the damage to the infrastructure.
You realize, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our plowing protocol is we don't even use plows up to 4 inches. We rely on salt to clear the snow.
I'll actually get more into that because we're starting to change some of those practices.
I mean, we use salt as a snow removal,
Yeah. So what about safety?
right? Because that's the idea.
Yep.
Lay the salt over 3 inches of snow. The cars mix it up.
Right.
It liquefies and then it runs off.
I think
That's literally the goal, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong,
we
but
have
that's.
changed our philosophy
Okay.
over many several years, based on what the public tolerance is, and change is never quick because an immediate change is going to shock people and cause them to, not understand what's going on. But we have
Yeah, we'll hear about that, yes.
slowly started to change how we're doing things as the tolerance allows. And I'll talk more. I have more slides, and I'll get more into the details, and we can talk about those details and how we're
I mean,
starting to
personally,
more.
I'm with you 100% on this. However, I've also learned that this is one reason why efforts to seriously address climate change will probably not succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Because this requires a change in behavior and like you're talking about people, slow down or park on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
They won't do it. They won't do it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's a big ask.
Yeah. I would say one thing though, I mean, we are seeing a lot of, like I said, municipalities bring down salt use by, even just in this area, Cudahy has dropped their salt use by, they had the numbers 69.9%. in a couple years. So it's like there is this opportunity. We have just kind of used salt with abandon, and as we really work to calibrate equipment, work on that mechanical removal, utilize brine before the storm, pre-wet with brine, the reductions
Why is that
are staggering.
beneficial? It's salt to salt, isn't it?
It is, but brine, because the sodium and the chloride have broken apart, they're already available to start melting immediately. It also, when you pre-wet salt, you don't get that bounce and scatter. You guys have probably gone behind salt trucks
Correct.
before where you see the salt and then it's bouncing out of the lane, right? So you can lose like 30+% outside of the driving lanes. So it helps salt stick in place where you really need it to be. And we're seeing reductions, 35% reductions by using pre-wet salt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So safety, you said you
Yeah,
reduced
safe-
300 to 200 to 100. Was there more accidents?
No.
Okay.
We'll come back to that slide.
PSAs.
PSAs. And so we're going to turn it over to me now. And so to the point I was making,
Whose district is that? They need to cut they. Oh, that's not my district. They need to cut their bushes.
I'm not sure where that was. I'm not sure where that was.
All right, please put that request.
Okay, well, we'll get it in there. So essentially, before we play the PSAs, what I want to explain is the reason Allison is here is that we jointly applied for a grant and won a grant, and that grant essentially provided education and outreach, not only for the elected officials that are sitting here, but across the city of Milwaukee, but also our residents. It paid for education material for our residents and training enhancement for our operators. So we won that grant. We were able to do 2 public service announcements that you're going to see. These are going to be aired on Fox 6 from November 20th through February 4th via their streaming services and commercials. So that's really great because we're able to get the message out. Again, we're able to train our operators. In fact, you'll see some of our staff are a part of these PSAs. And then obviously coming here and providing you with information. And to Alderman Bauman's point, as we go on in the presentation, I'll be able to show you how we've already made and implemented some of these changes, and there's been very little notice to it. And that's because we're making very strategic, small, incremental changes towards something better. Knowing that we're a large urban area with very unique challenges, public safety is always number one, but we're constantly perfecting what we're doing over and over to try to get us where we need to be. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show the public service announcements that'll be airing.
Yes. Ready for winter. Hey, Grandma, how you doing? You think you need help shoveling the snow this year? You know how bad Milwaukee winters can get. Just some things to go over. I don't want you to get ticketed again like you did last year, so pay attention to the text alerts. Okay, they'll let you know what side of the street you need to be parked on. And lastly, Grandma, I know how you like to speed race. Be careful and aware of the snow plows. Give them plenty of room, okay? And just stay out the storm period. I'm only telling you because I love you, Grandma.
First one and then the second one.
Mother Nature, we can't dictate what she's going to throw at us. Mother Nature, we can't dictate what she's going to throw at us. I've been working with the city of Milwaukee for almost 30